Welcome to Divorce Talk with Nicola Beer, a show dedicated to creating change and emotional healing for executives, professionals, and expats in the various stages of marriage breakdown and divorce. Discover insightful strategies to better manage your personal affairs and learn secrets to creating more happiness, love, and success in your life today.
Hello, welcome. This is Louise Crooks, and I am your host today, and I'm excited to have my guest today. Let me tell you a little bit about our episode today. So Nicola is an expert coach, a relationship coach, and she's a leading authority on how to save your marriage. She's an international best-selling author with 4 books, and has been featured on ABC, CBC, NBC, Fox News Network, Huffington Post, and Wall Street Select. So she's really, had a lot of exposure around what she's doing. She works with individuals from all over the world to transform their marital situation, as well as with couples, to restore the love, passion, respect, and happiness. She also, if you choose to go down the divorce route, really loves to support children in going through that process, so that they come out of the other side still feeling whole, happy, and able to continue life in productive ways. And she is a real boon to parents who are going through that kind of experience. You can learn more about Nicola at SaveMyMarriage.com and PurePeaceCoaching.com. And in this episode of a 3-part series of dealing with a marriage crisis, choosing your pathway to happiness, we'll really explore that difficult question couples often face of, should I stay or should I go? Yeah, that is a tough question. And there's so many people who stay in the midst of that feeling or question, not knowing how to move forward or what to do. So many factors contribute to why a couple stay together when they are deeply unhappy. And we're going to take some opportunity today to highlight when it's time to make a decision, how to make that difficult decision, and what to do based on that decision. The good news is that many marital situations are salvageable and can lead to thriving and happy marriages with the right support. Isn't that a relief? I'm sure it must be for many of you who are listening to this. And how do you know what to do and when? So we'll be discussing the mistakes undecided folks who stay in limbo inadvertently make, and how to determine if their marriage can be saved. This is a life-changing topic. Yes, it is. So I hope you can join us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. And we'll just dive into the topic. So I just want to say welcome.
Great. Well, I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Great. So I talked about our episode today, Nicola, which is should I stay or should I go, making decisions in a struggling marriage. And so I'm excited to dive in and just learn a little bit about you first, Nicola. So, I think, those who are listening would really love to hear a little bit. So do you want to just share, what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So I help individuals either single-handedly or couples to save their marriage. And if divorce has already been decided and that is the path that they go down, then I help them themselves get through it, because obviously divorce can be a very stressful and painful time, especially for children. So part of that is about how to minimize the pain for children so that everybody comes out thriving once they've gone through the initial loss. And then unique to what I do is there are many people, which is the topic of what we're going to be talking about today, that are unsure whether they want to save the marriage or whether they want to end the relationship and get divorced, and they're stuck in this limbo. So for them, I guide them for them to discover for themselves what it is they really want and start taking action around it rather than being in that stuck state.
Yes, I can imagine, Nicola, that is a fairly common thing, and that many people stay together for perhaps the wrong reasons. You know, they think they're doing the right thing, but in fact it can be more damaging in some ways. I know from my own experience that, you know, living in a marriage, my parents' marriage, you know, as a youngster, that, you know, it seemed like they were at war, you know, for a good part of my, you know, my formative years, and it was a very painful place to be in, you know, to be living in that. Don't think parents often understand the energy that they create in a home and how that can, you know, transfer to the children, and so, you know, so much impact that can happen. So I'm really excited that we're talking about this topic today.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's how I got started. Yeah, so my parents, as soon as I can remember, they never ever got on. There was always tension when they weren't at each other's throats. You know, they weren't ever comfortable around each other. I never saw them hug. I never saw them show any affection. So I grew up in a household where they were always shouting, and there was always tension, and then eventually they did divorce. And unfortunately, the stress and the tension and the arguing between them didn't stop.
Wow.
There still wasn't any peace at home. There was still tension. And I didn't really know what love was, because they weren't any role model for love. And my dad left, and then my mum, because of the stress of raising 5 children on her own, and we didn't have much money, she was also very aggressive, stressed, didn't have time for us, as you can imagine, raising 5 children on your own. So I was really, you know, shocked when I started dating in my own relationships, how little I knew about love, about making relationships work, and that's how I decided to do what I do now, to help people either make divorce not as stressful or as painful as it was for me and my brothers and sisters, or to actually create more love in the home, because I believe that everything starts from the home. If we have a happy, loving home environment where you feel comfortable going home, where you can rest and relax, we can take all the things that we have outside of our home, so the work stress, the traffic stress, the constant bombardment by media with new information. We need to have somewhere safe and relaxing to recuperate and have that energy that we need for the rest of our life.
It's, you know, when I think about it, Nicola, you know, it's amazing how, you know, the effects of what parents create for, you know, inadvertently create in the home for children and for themselves. You know, you talk about how things didn't really change after that. You know, there was still a lot of fighting and tension. It's almost like, you know, you've created this pattern of behavior that just continues because you just don't know any other way. And, you know, that is also then ingrained, you know, for the children to take on into their future lives, which is unfortunate. So, you know, managing this, first of all, you know, making that decision around divorce is so important, and whether to stay together or not. And then also, you know, thinking about, you know, what you're role modeling to the children, what you're passing on to the children is so important. And I'll just share with you, Nicola, that, you know, I knew, of course, that my household was fraught with tension and shouting and unhappiness, but I didn't realize how it could be different. And when I left home, I actually moved in with a friend of mine's parents and her and a friend and her parents and family for about 6 weeks. And it suddenly dawned on me when I was living in their home that this was a different way of being. You know, it was so much more peaceful and supportive and so completely different to the environment that I had been in. I was actually very thankful to have had that experience, just to realize how different it could be. So, yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you. Pretty crazy.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Nicola, share a little bit more about your background and you shared how you came to do this work, but, if you want to share a little bit more, I would be, and I'm sure the listeners would also be very interested to hear more.
Oh, well, yeah, it started from the divorce of my parents, and I realized, always knew that having gone through that, having felt alone and depressed and lost, I always wanted to help people or be in some kind of counselling and coaching role. And I wasn't sure when I decided to set up the business a long time ago what area I wanted to focus on. And I went back to the UK and I became certified in grief and loss.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that, on the first day, they have you chart all of the losses of your life. And at age 33, the biggest loss in my life was still my parents' divorce and everything that happened as a result of the way it was handled.
Wow.
And the pain. And I came back to Dubai, and then I just having people struggling with divorce, women that wanted to rebuild a new life, men who, they didn't realise that the divorce was going to happen, and they were in a complete shock. And so, and all the children suffering as well, and I decided that this is really what I wanted to do. And then, focusing on this, I started to attract lots of people that said, well, Nicola, can you help us save our marriage? Or I'm not sure whether I want to save the marriage or not. And I realised that stages, there's the unhappy marriage where they're not sure if they want to save it or not, and this is making things worse for them. Then you have those that are getting divorced and then struggling there with their children. So this is what I'm going to do. Ever since I've been, loving the journey, loving helping people, just really focusing on getting people out of pain. That's what I'm passionate about doing.
Yeah. I'm sure it's been quite a healing journey for you as well, Nicola, with all the research and the courses and programs that you've done to come to this place of giving others support. Would you say that's true?
Yeah. I've done I've got lots of qualifications. I've done lots of training, and each time I'm learning more and more things about myself and also how to help other people. So I've literally been on over 15 different training programs over the last 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And you had a program that came to light from all of this, didn't you?
So I have the Save My Marriage program, which is a 10-week course which people can do online. That every week there's a step to working towards saving your marriage, and it covers things that like how to create more love, how to overcome resentment, how to communicate more effectively, how to revive intimacy. And it came out of everything I learned. And it's more of a course because I don't want it to be just one of those things that a self-help thing and you buy it and then that's it. So every week there's supportive private office hours where I answer questions that people have.
Oh, that's great.
Videos, content, so that you're fully supported. Anyone that joins the program, any question they have will be answered.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And you mentioned resentment in that process, and I have to say that, I think my relationship with my mother was severely damaged when I was growing up because of the situation at home, and it was only when I did a program that focused on the focus of resentment, and I suddenly realized how much the resentment I had towards her and the bitterness I had towards her was destroying me as well as my relationship with her, or the possibility of a relationship with her. So I know that that's a huge one. We don't really think about it until the right questions are being asked. So I'm so excited to hear that you're doing things like that to help your people. So awesome. So tell us a little bit about, what makes you passionate about this, Nicola. I know you've alluded to this already, but share a little bit more on that.
Well, I'm really passionate about creating change and people learning the tools to get them out of it. And everything I've learned, it comes from action. And we often, and I'm a big overthinker, and I'm analysing things. It's taken me all this time in my life to realise that actually that just actually ends up making you more stuck.
Yeah.
More trapped when you try to intellectualise or try to overanalyse your relationship. Do I love them or not? What is love? Am I in love with them or not in love with them? Are they right to me? This is how people get really stuck in relationships, and that is exactly what has happened through my relationship history. And knowing that, and knowing that the only way to get out of difficult places within relationships and in other areas of life, it's all about actions. You have to be in touch with your own intuition, so getting in touch with what drives you, what's important to you, looking at healing within the body, where are you holding different emotions in the body, and getting into action. That's how you're going to change your life. That's how you're going to feel empowered and positive. Get out of the mind. Definitely.
Yeah. And, in terms of creating a peaceful, loving home, I know you're very passionate about that, particularly with children. Nicola, do you want to say anything about that?
I think children suffer a lot when it comes to the changes that happen in divorce, because it's so much to take on. It's not just, okay, mum or dad may be moving out. It's a case of often they can change schools, the routine changes, and children like everything to be kept the same, and so it can be a huge loss for them. So I'm really passionate about helping parents to minimise this stress, to know what to do, to know how to tell children, to know how to support them through the initial transition, and then how to co-parent effectively again, because even if you've gone through a divorce and you're not, it was painful or stressful and you were arguing over the finances and the custody, you need to be able to get on for the children, because the children don't want to be put in the middle. And unfortunately, my parents made a lot of mistakes. I really hope to educate parents to not do that to their children. And now I'm grateful for those mistakes, because I can then help support more people. And these are things just like discussing finances in front of children. My mum always used to say to us, your dad doesn't love you because he's not giving you any money.
Wow.
He's not giving us any money. So I really associated love with money. Wow. I thought, no money means no love. And so then when I was dating in my 20s, I still had this belief in my head that someone says on you, they love you, and if they don't love you, which is obviously a disaster. It's just like this that we can learn. Sure, I just said I have a parent for co-parenting, and I also have a program for teenagers.
Oh, wow.
Because teenagers take a lot, because they're old enough to know what's going on. And often they can become the surrogate support parents. So we want to help them to stay children.
Yes, that makes sense. We've got someone in the chat room here saying, better to avoid relationships outright, I say. So I've just said that means not experiencing love, though. So if you don't take risks, you don't get the benefits of relationships either. in our topic today, we are talking about, deciding whether to stay in or leave a struggling marriage. So why is it important for people to get out of a marriage or a relationship? You don't have to be married. So many people aren't these days, but have a marriage-like relationship. Why is it important for people to actually get out of that limbo, Nicola? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think it's really important to get out of it because it's so harmful. When you're in that state, it really can affect you emotionally. I mean, many people say that they feel moody, they sometimes get depressed. If you're constantly thinking, shall I leave or shall I go? Now, I'm not talking about the odd occasion where you think, I wonder what it would be like to go out with Brad Pitt or whoever. Ambivalence in relationship is really, and then limbo is really where you're analysing everything all the time, and it just becomes exhausting, it becomes draining, and therefore it affects you emotionally, irritability, and many people find that their small things are really getting to them, they're really starting to explode. And then you've got physical symptoms. So many people have shared to me when they're going through this that their immune system is lower, they're not sleeping properly, they've got a back pain or neck pain, or they just seem to be able to pick up bugs and they're just not going because they're just constantly drained by the stress of trying to work out, is it good, is it not good, and the uncertainty of flip-flopping between the two. And lastly, it's damaging because of the damage that it does to the relationship. Because in order to be in it, you need to switch off and numb yourself to the negativity. Whereas if you're not doing that, then you're constantly your mind is constantly overanalyzing everything, where you're not really present, not really enjoying the relationship.
Yeah.
And so your partner can be confused, they can be hurt, they can notice that you're hot and cold. You're not committing to things. I had a couple where the man just couldn't say that he wanted to go on holiday with his wife in 2 months' time, yet didn't want to leave, and so she couldn't plan anything. And obviously that was having a real negative impact on the relationship and how then she felt towards him. She just couldn't understand it and was getting so upset that they couldn't plan anything.
Wow. It sounds like it got to that stage, Nicola, where anything he did would have been a problem in her eyes. The tolerance level has gone. Basically, there's no give and take in a relationship like that any longer.
Yeah, and it causes confusion and heartache. And then the worst thing that people do in the stuck state is they stay in this uncertainty and then they just completely shut down.
Yes.
And then there's just no communication. And I have couples that come where there's no communication for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. They just don't communicate, and that's when the resentment builds and builds and builds and builds, and then sometimes the couple just end it without even ever giving it the opportunity of trying. And I think if on the other hand you can make the decision to stay, then you can free up your energy, your time, your headspace, and work on really saving the marriage and resolving problems. You can get into that will make you happier, more empowered, and out of your head.
Yeah.
And show your partner that you're loving them and respecting them by working on it.
Yeah.
And show your children, if you do have children, that this is what a loving relationship is. You give when you don't want to give, and you mentioned a great thing there about not when you don't want to give in a relationship. And if on the other hand you decide to leave, well, at least then, if that is an option for you, you can focus on creating a new life, and you can free your partner to be with someone that really wants to be with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a friend of mine who ended up getting divorced. She didn't want to, but he was cheating on her, and then they got divorced. He was basically moving on to the new relationship, and she had a lot of
turmoil around the relationship breaking up, but in essence, the recognition that you don't want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you, for one thing, and secondly, it gives you a chance to get on with your life, to move forward rather than be, existing in this relationship that actually doesn't support you in any way. So,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah, and enables you to, if you don't let it drag on, then you can still stay friends, but you can go into that shutdown mode where you stop giving, and then you become more controlling on finances, and then you're analysing like a balanced marriage. I'm doing this for you, you're not doing this for me, and then you just starve the relationship then of happiness, of love, and no one can be happy living in that environment. Going home, I think loneliness is difficult when you go through a separation or divorce, but loneliness when you're living with someone, it's equally, if not more painful, because you're going and you're being around someone where the relationship is not anywhere near what it used to be, and you're missing it, you're longing it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So just continuing, Nicola, from mentioning this person in the chat room, they're talking about, this, initially he had said better to avoid relationships outright, I say. I think he was saying that in a bit of a quip, but he's since then shared how relationships are too much of a liability, so much can go wrong and so much a sacrifice is just not worth it in my eyes. And he's just revealed that he's 20 years old, and from what he's seen of other people's relationships, in the end you'll get emotionally screwed and your wallet will also suffer. So do you have any thoughts about what he's sharing, Nicola? And, my sense is that, he has already experienced at a very young age how, relationship can be very damaging. And, of course, the work that you do helps that to not be the case. Do you want to share a little bit about that before we move on?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would say that, unfortunately, when we get into relationships, we cannot control the other person, and they may disappoint us, and they may break our trust, and we can't really work on that, because those kind of things can happen. But what we have to work on, and when we start new relationships, if we have been burnt and we have been hurt, is we need to focus on rebuilding our trust in ourselves, so that we know, okay, if a bad thing happens, then I trust myself that I'm going to be strong enough. I trust myself to love myself to get out of a bad situation when I get the warning signs or I get that intuition. I trust to love myself enough that if I am disappointed, then I'm going to be able to get through it. I'm going to give myself love. I'm going to give myself proper care and help. So it's really focusing on the trust that you have in you.
Yeah.
And giving yourself time to heal. I mean, if you're in that space at the moment where you're feeling that relationships are not worth it and they're going to drain you emotionally and financially, as that listener mentioned, then that is not the right mindset to be going into a relationship, because you're going to be attracting that to you.
Yeah.
And once you let go of that resentment and let go of that hurt, you're going to be able to attract and be on a different vibration to attract someone better in with you. And that's why I always believe giving time for healing, and everyone's journey is different, before you look at any relationship again, if you're feeling like the way you are.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because the implication here is that he's just shut himself down to having a relationship at all, which is quite sad. He says here, I'm assuming it's a he, because the name is unusual. He says, my parents were never married, but my mum left my father when I was 5, and they kept getting back together, splitting up, back together, a cycle that I'm sick of, and a lot of money and time being wasted along the way. He says, common sense goes out the window, and I prefer my freedom and a free, unclouded head so I can make rational decisions. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we all go through that sometimes when we break up with someone, and we think, well, or you know, for that listener, when they've gone through that with their parents, where we think, well, no.
Yeah.
But then after a while, we see other couples having great relationships, and long for that relationship, and that changes. So just to allow that, if that's how you feel at the moment.
Yeah. We all have to kind of go through certain processes, don't we? You know, to get to where we're going. So, Nicola, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see undecided couples actually making?
That's a really good question. I think there's a few things that they make, and it comes from the information that we're told in society on how to deal with relationships. It's biggest mistake, and there's three main ones, and they come from the advice that we're given in society to make, with relationships, the bad relationship advice that we get. So one of the things that people will be told is not to think about it and to distract yourself, to keep yourself busy. And so what people do is that, it's terrible advice. People think, well, I can't really stop the thoughts. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so they fall into the trap of either overeating, oversleeping, overdrinking, overspending, or getting into any kind of unhealthy temporary obsession to try and block out their thinking. And of course, all that does do is gives you another problem to deal with. It doesn't ever resolve the issue. Another bit of bad advice and one of the major mistakes that I see is when people weigh up a list of the pros and cons. And someone will say, well, write a list of positive and negative.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work. Just weighing up the pros and cons doesn't work because it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help the relationship if you're focusing on all the negative things. It doesn't help you in your life if you're writing and weighing up all the negative things, and it can cause people to stay stuck.
Yeah.
Also, it's impossible. How on earth can you compare being in a relationship to not being in a relationship that's completely unknown? You cannot compare something that's known to something that's completely not known. You don't know what it would be like.
Yeah.
And thirdly, we have no measurement of how to weigh up pros and cons.
That's true, because one thing can be a lot more meaningful than one other little thing, right?
Yeah, because we're dealing with feelings, experiences, interactions, not the facts and figures.
Yeah.
So those are two main reasons for the mistakes people make. And then the last one is waiting for time to change things. So people say, time will tell.
Yes.
And, it's just a myth. I know people that have waited 10, 20, even 40 years for their marriage to have a sign to work on the marriage or to have a sign to leave the marriage. And time does nothing. And I just relate it to if you had a flat tire, you wouldn't just sit and watch the flat tire and wait for the air and the light and the energy to be sucked back into it. You would take action. You would either take action yourself and go about fixing the tire, or you would hire an expert to guide you to what to help you fix the tire. And that's how I see relationships. If you're just going to do nothing and wait for time to do something, time to make things better, or just think your way through things, that is not going to work. And these are the biggest mistakes that I see people in this limbo make.
Yeah. Having shared with you what happened with my parents, that, in fact, they actually never got divorced, Nicola, and I remember at the age of 16 begging them to get a divorce, it was just a very miserable time. So, the idea of actually needing them to be apart so that, one could have a healthy existence, just boggles the mind when I think back to that, you know. I mean, of course, I didn't know the implications at that time. You know, I would have preferred to have been with my father, but the law would have made it so that I would have been with my mother if they had split. So in some ways, you know, I look back on that now, and I obviously didn't know everything being 16, but yeah, it did really feel like you know, it definitely wasn't a healthy place to be in. And I think a lot of parents, you know, one of the reasons they stay together is we're doing it for the children, you know, and that doesn't work, does it, necessarily?
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's the biggest reason that sometimes couples will say they want to work on the relationship, or sometimes they'll say that's why they're together. And I say, if you're going to stay together for the children, then you may as well get happy for the children.
Yeah.
If you're going to be together anyway, then work on the relationship. Start to become friends again. Start to love each other again.
Yeah.
And enjoy each other again.
Yeah, and I think it's an important message from what you're saying, Nicola, is that you can do things to reignite that relationship and that experience together. You know, I think that's probably why a lot of people don't take any steps. They think, oh, they'll give it time. And as you said, time doesn't do anything if you're not taking action around things, because you're just doing the same things over and over. Sitting in that and just allowing it to be the way that it is isn't going to actually do anything. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Nicola, that you have to take steps to reignite or find that love again. And sometimes we just need support to do that. You know, we can't do it on our own. If we haven't done it, chances are we're not going to do it. Do you have any examples, you know, of experiences you've had with clients, you know, people, you know, that you've been in contact with, Nicola, that sort of speaks to some of the issues we've talked about so far?
I mean, I have worked with hundreds of couples that come and they say they're not sure if they feel love anymore. They're not sure if they find their partner attractive. They're not sure if they want to work on the marriage or not. And then I say to them, okay, so what are you doing to save the marriage? And they'll say, nothing.
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's why. And so if they're willing, which most of them are, then they'll start taking action to rebuild love, because love is an action. It's not a feeling. We feel love by the acts that we do for other people. It's not something that we get. And so people then start to feel the love very quickly.
Yeah.
Relationships be transformed just by small daily habits.
Yeah.
And then sometimes people do come and they really are confused.
Yeah.
And normally, quite often, it's men. Well, it can be women as well, but I've had a lot of cases of men come and they're finding the intimacy hard in their relationship.
Yes.
And the intimacy isn't working in their relationship. They're alarmed that the relationship can never be resolved again because of this issue. And what a lot of people don't realise is that the first thing to be affected when there is resentment, when there is negativity, and often one of the first things that can be healed once you start being more loving and comfortable around each other and friendly towards each other, then it naturally quite often it gets resolved.
Interesting. Wow. Very interesting. Okay. So, just in regards, you know, if how does a person know if their marriage can actually be saved, Nicola? Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, so, I mean, I believe that it's never really too late if you're willing to take action.
Yeah.
Either on your own to save the marriage or together as a couple.
Yeah.
And it's not just about actions that you're doing towards each other. That's part of it. But if your marriage, to save your marriage, you also need to look at your own thinking patterns.
Right.
Are you thinking negatively? Are you telling yourself, "Oh, my partner's lazy, they don't love me," or the relationship is doomed, or things aren't how they were, or for you, holding on to that also is not going to be helpful to save the marriage. However, if you're willing to work on yourself, to work on the relationship, I believe that all marriages can be saved.
Wow.
And it's really about, because I've seen it, I've had the privilege of seeing it. But if someone's completely shut down, then the other person can sometimes transform them, but not always.
Yeah. So would you say that it's true, Nicola, that one, even if a couple didn't come to you, but one of the couple, one part of the couple, came to you to work on themselves, do you think that they could have an influence on their relationship?
Actually, 40% of the people that have joined the online Save My Marriage program join on their own.
Wow.
And quite often their spouse might join them later once they see the results and see them changing.
Wow.
We make,
that makes sense.
as a person in a relationship, you make up 50% of the relationship.
Right.
But if you've got the right intent, the right motivation, the right attitude, if you're giving and you're showing love and it's just radiating love, energy, passion, it's impossible for the other person not to change.
Yeah. It's like the butterfly effect, isn't it? One change is going to make a ripple effect in the world. And so if you're able to do that for yourself, in your relationship, it's impossible. With every action, there's a reaction, if we look at it from a scientific perspective. So it makes total sense what you're saying, Nicola. And I'm guessing that, people don't see the opportunity. If the other part of the couple doesn't see the opportunity and wants to push that person away even further, chances are it means that they aren't really willing to come, to work on the relationship themselves, and that's a sign in itself that it's time to go down the divorce route anyway.
Yeah, I think you can. You don't want to push someone, and sometimes the people will say, they'll try and force their partner into having marriage counselling and doing things like that. And I think the best thing you can do is, if you want to save your marriage, is start a program on your own, rather than
work on yourself.
Something they don't want to do. Yeah.
You must find, Nicola, that people who are in the situation where the only choice they have is to work on themselves are often thinking, but it's not them, it's the other person. What would you say to that?
I would say that even if you do believe that it's them, not you, we have to take some responsibility, even if it's just 5 or 10%. And if it is them, if you just work on that 5 or 10%, it still can have a huge impact.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Because, it's difficult without a specific example, but even if someone's behaviour is not how you want it to be, and that's been continuing, and you've probably been reacting in exactly the same way, when you start to change the way you react, often their behaviour will change. So there's always some influence that we can have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Anything else you want to share about, how does a person know if their marriage can be saved before we move on to my next question?
No, I think really the only way you know is if you actually take action, whether that's taking action to save the marriage. But if you're not ready yet and you're not in that headspace, then work with someone and do an assessment on yourself. What do you really want in your life? What's important to you? What makes you happy in a relationship? Can the person you're with meet your expectations? And where are you now in your life? And that, whether you do that assessment on your own and then you'll know, or you do it, or you start taking action towards a relationship, that's how you'll know. But definitely, having gone through painful years myself of trying to analyse everything, that definitely does not work. Doing nothing and thinking won't make your relationship any better or give you any more clarity.
Yes, I think that's really a good thing to share there. So probably would be a good time, Nicola, just to let people know where we can find you. I know it's on the show profile too, but do you want to share where people can find you, just to make sure that whoever's listening gets that piece before we jump on to the next question?
Sure. So I have two websites.
Mm-hmm.
So the Save the Marriage program is www.savemymarriageprogram, and the one that is helping people to get clear, or if they're feeling unsure, or help their children through divorce, is purepeacecoaching.com.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so purepeacecoaching.com. Beautiful.
Yes. And on both websites, there are free resources that you can download to help you with your situation, whether that's the 7 secrets of saving your marriage, the quiz to know can your marriage be saved, or ebooks to help people going through divorce.
Yeah, great. That's very valuable. And I know you've got a quiz as well. Do you want to tell them about the quiz that they can do?
Sure. So the quiz is a Can My Marriage Be Saved quiz. So it covers 30 of the most common marriage problems that people face, and then an answer about a description about what you can do if you're facing help, whether your relationship can be saved or not.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So where can they go to get that, Nicola?
So that's SaveMyMarriageProgram.com.
And do you want me to give you the extra little link that takes them straight to the quiz? Or should
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, so SaveMyMarriageProgram.com/quiz2/. So I'll say that again. SaveMyMarriageProgram.com/quiz-2/. So that's where you can find that free quiz to just see where you are in your marriage. Okay, great. Thanks for that, Nicola. So, yeah, so what can stop someone from actually making the decision? I think that's important because I'm sure that happens a lot.
Yeah, I would say the most thing that keeps people stuck and from making that decision is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really paralyzing. So people can fear working on the marriage because they're scared of being hurt, they're scared of being taken as people, they don't want to feel abandoned, or they're scared of being vulnerable, or sometimes they're scared to actually work on it, to admit their faults, to admit blame. And there's often, when it comes to working on a marriage, a fear of disappointment, of it not working, or a fear of disappointment that they may disappoint their partner, and they don't want. And then there's also fears for being in the relationship as well, for leaving the relationship, that keeps people from staying in an unhappy, unsupportive environment. And that can be the fear of hurting children, the fear of regretting the decision, the fear of loneliness, and will they cope on their own? And there's often associated with it a fear of failure, looking like a failure, and that shame that can be associated with a separation or divorce that people have.
Yeah.
And what you really need to do is to get comfortable with your fears, to work through the fears, to reduce them, and that's how you can be free of it. But unless you do that, if you just stay with your fears, then it can be very paralyzing. Another thing that stops people from making the decision is the resentment. They may love their partner and they really want to make the relationship work, but they get so angry all the time that as soon as you want to make a decision to work on the marriage and to do something, they just get stopped by their anger or their jealousy, and resentment can block it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I see stops people from making decisions is if they are actually going through a bit of a difficult time in their life in general. Often if they're feeling depressed, if they've lost their parents, having a midlife crisis, they often self-diagnose that to me, where they're so unsure about what direction they're going in life, or they're feeling down and not themselves, that they just don't work on the relationship or to leave the relationship. They just stay and shut down, kind of withdrawn mode.
I'm sure that must be quite common, being shut down like that. Yeah, there's lots to sift through there, sift through there, and people really have to have courage, I think, to take that step to, reach out for support, because it must feel very vulnerable when they do that, Nicola.
Yeah, absolutely. It's creating a safe, comfortable environment where we can look at the fears and look at any resentment and work on that on an individual level. And it's empowering. It's empowering when you do that. It's very empowering, because it's horrible to be stuck. Whilst it's painful and it does take some energy and some courage to do that, the alternative of living in the exhausted state of uncertainty, many find a lot worse, and they get to that point where they say, you know what, I'm going to come and I'm going to get support and I'm going to get out of this. Yeah.
Like anything's better than this as it is right now. Yeah. Okay. So can you share a little bit about, what you offer to potential clients, at the moment, who are in that moment right now where they're struggling to decide, whether or not to save their marriage? What would you recommend, if someone approached you to do that, and how could they approach you if they wanted to explore this, Nicola?
Sure. So it's a process that I go through with individuals.
That's if they're not taking the online program, right?
Yes. If they're so undecided that they're not ready to take the Save My Marriage online program, and they're in that stuck state, they don't even know, then I have kind of an assessment I go through with individuals. What's gone wrong in their relationship? What do they want their relationship to be like? We do an assessment of their needs and what is important to them most in a relationship, what makes them happy. And then they can look and they can say, well, I need these 5 top things to make me happy in a relationship. Is it possible for me to get it in my current relationship? And they can then say yes or no. And if it's not, then they're not going to be happy. We also look at their individual dreams. And are their individual dreams and are their relationship and marriage dreams, are they going to be able to achieve them in the current relationship without demanding the other person to change it significantly?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yeah.
And also look at what are the fears there that are stopping them from making a decision, and what is the resentment. And I really love clearing resentment, because I believe once we clear a lot of these emotions, we can see and make decisions a lot more clearly.
Yeah.
And sometimes resulted in people saying that I know I must leave, I'm thankful, I'm not scared of being alone anymore, I'm not scared about the children anymore, I'm not scared about the finances now, Nicola, because we've gone through it and I'm ready to leave. I should have left 5 years ago. And then other people, they say, wow, doing this assessment, I've realised that my partner's doing nearly everything that I really want in a relationship, and I just need to let go of this old thing, this old past hurt. And once we've worked on that, they feel free and they feel liberated and want to work on the relationship.
Wow. So, sounds like there's so much potential there. It's just about really, diving in and honing in on those few things that are stopping them from leading a full life and marriage. Once they identify those things, and I think when you're just in your own head about it, you're not necessarily going to uncover those things. So again, it's that leaving it to time or trying to figure it out on your own. If you haven't been able to figure it out on your own up to this point, then is that going to change?
Yeah.
So
exactly, and it's one-to-one sessions. So it's completely private and confidential. Sometimes men and women will say to me, do I have to tell my spouse about it? And I say, this is for you. This is an investment of you to get out of that depressed state that you're in.
Yes.
So it's an individual program, this one.
That's great. So Nicola, I know you have a fabulous podcast that would like to find out about, just to even listen to some of the episodes that you've done and will do, around this topic. So do you want to share a little bit about that and how they can find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm now making podcasts for, I think, close to 2 years now.
Wow, 2 years.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
So if you go to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or SoundCloud and put in Nicola Beer, then several shows will come up. I have Divorce Talk, which talks about being in this stuck state, talks about fears, talks about how to save marriage as well. And then I have another podcast show purely focused on relationship saving strategies, and that is called How to Save Your Marriage with Nicola Beer. But if you type in my name in the search engine, then you can have a listen to both and see which episode resonates for you.
Great. That's awesome, Nicola. I'm sure there must be so much wonderful tips and information for people there. So I just want to make sure people know how to spell your last name, Nicola. So Beer, just like the drink.
Just like
beer.
The drink, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Any examples you want to share of experiences you've had, Nicola, before we get to your, wrapping up the show with your pearl of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of experiences where couples have literally been on this shutdown mode, in limbo mode, for a long time. So I'm talking, sometimes couples come after a year, and sometimes they literally have said it's been over 10 years where they just haven't communicated. And then it's only when the divorce word is threatened that they say, well, no, do we really want to get divorced or not? And I was working with Tina and Dave, and they had been 7 years without any intimacy, 7 years without any communication, apart from the day-to-day logistics of finances and children. And literally, when they started both committing to the relationship, when they both said, we're going to focus on this and started working on it, they managed to change things literally within 4 weeks.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. Because they made it their focus. They said, right, I'm going to make you important. Let's get to know each other again. Let's go activities together every weekend. Let's not ever, they banned text messaging, so they had to call each other. And it just really rebuilt the relationship. And then they both worked with me to really let go of that resentment. I had them make list every single thing they were resenting on a paper, and then what their part was it in creating it, and then and they found that liberating, because once they started to read the list out loud to me, they realised, I cannot believe I'm holding on to this. I can't believe I'm annoyed that you got me the wrong Christmas present 14 years ago, and yet they, things like that. So yeah.
It's amazing how little things can build up as well as the big ones. So, wow. Okay. So what pearl of wisdom would you leave us with today, Nicola, based on what we've been talking about?
I would say that the most important thing is, whether it's on your own or together or with some support, is to just get yourself out of the limbo. Because I see divorce happening a lot where people are burying their heads, where people have buried their head in the sand. And they thought, well, let's just hope things change. And of course, nothing changes. And then eventually one person says, that's it, I'm out. And it's better to communicate your frustrations, and just to remember that staying in this limbo state the only way we can do that is get out of our heads. I just really want to touch on what you mentioned earlier, Louise, because I love that about the couples that stay together for the children. Well, if you are and you've decided that the reason that you're still in the relationship is because of the children, then why not get happy for them?
Yeah. It's actually a responsibility, really, to do that, isn't it, Nicola?
Yeah.
You know, because I think in some ways the children, and let me know if I'm right on this one, you know, the children can be an excuse not to do anything.
Stay in the marriage and wait.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they'll wait until the children are 16.
Yeah.
And that's no way to live. I mean,
no way to live.
So short, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So much to this, and I can see how powerful the work must be, Nicola, for your clients, you know, for the things that you do with them and support them with. So, you know, it sounds like really amazing work that you're doing in the world. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. It's really powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being on the show today. I just want to let everyone know that this is part of a 3-part episode, and it's called How to Save a Marriage, Avoid Divorce, and Be Happy Again. So we'll actually get into more detail around what the steps would be to take those steps of saving a marriage and be happy again, as we've talked about a little bit today. And then we'll be discussing how to protect children through divorce and overcome co-parenting challenges. So that's a big one too. And we've talked a lot about the impact it can have on children in divorce, and you know, just sadly even seeing how the young gentleman on our chat was sharing how it's impacted him to the point where he doesn't even want to consider relationships. You know, just shows you how much impact the relationship can have if you're not actually paying attention to the fallout of your own relationship with someone. So I'm excited for us to cover that, and it's wonderful, again, Nicola, that you've made that a big focus of your business too, you know, of the work that you do to really support kids, you know, in situations like that. So thank you so much for being here today, Nicola. It was a great conversation, and I want to thank all our listeners for being here as well. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great rest of your day, and talk to you again very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Divorce Talk with Nicola Beer. If you have enjoyed the program, please leave a rating and review on iTunes so more people dealing with marriage breakdown and divorce get the support they need. If you want more great free resources, such as secrets to a happier relationship, moving on fast after divorce, or tips on parenting through divorce, be sure to visit www.purepeacecoaching.com today.